Hi, welcome back. My name's Chris. I'm a French teacher at OuiCommunicate. We specialise in teaching French to adult learners, native speakers of English exclusively. And in this video, I'd like to talk about the different forces of influence that we bring with us in the classroom when we learn a foreign language before we've even learned our first word. And this video isn't made to scare anyone away from learning a language, on the contrary, but rather to share what I see as a language teacher and turn it into a positive by better understanding our situation as learners of a foreign language. Because there's a series of influences that condition our achievements in the language class, and that should be known by the learner to avoid disappointments and to understand why the results don't always match our expectations. And let's start with an easy example. Outside of language learning. If I were to go rafting tomorrow, something I've never done, my mind wouldn't be blank. I'm going rafting tomorrow and I'd put rafting up against all I know about boats, water also, and my own physical accomplishments. And I'd have an idea of what I'm going to experience tomorrow during my day out rafting. I'm preconditioning, if you want, the experience, and I'm approaching it in a certain way. I'm putting rafting up against all I know about water, about my own physical condition, and about boats. Now, for some people it will be apprehension, and for others it will be in full confidence. In any case, the human mind doesn't like blanks. We always make up a narrative about the things we do or we're about to do. And this, incidentally, is what makes marketing so hard. It's all about closing that gap between what you think about a product or a brand and what the brand wants you to think about them, and closing that gap. For example, if I equate McDonald's with obesity, which I do, it's no good for them. They'll have to work on me some more to make me see the truth. And I want you to think I'm the bloody best teacher of French who's ever lived, which I am. But as you watch this, you're making up a narrative about the kind of person I am, about my background, about my ability as a teacher, my professional competence. And if you think, well, he can't be that hot, can he? Well, that's no good, is it? We all do it. It's just the way the mind works. In language learning, I believe the preconditioning factor to be more present than in other fields of life, and for several reasons. Well, first, there's school. And second, there's the fact that we all speak at least one language. We all know at least one language. And we're not necessarily preconditioned to such a degree for things that are outside of the curriculum or for things that we don't usually do, such as rafting. For better or for worse, and let's be honest, usually for worse, schools have taken it upon themselves to include foreign languages in their curriculum. However, they don't automatically include things such as understanding graphic harmony, or understanding pre-Christian religions, or the role of symbolism in the human mind, or best practices in health and nutrition, but they do include languages traditionally, despite not really being equipped to teach them. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it, but I am saying, well, if you're going to teach foreign languages, make sure you're equipped to do it. Whatever the result we achieve in school, it leaves us with an imprint. It leaves most of us with an idea of what language learning entails, but also it gives us an idea of ourselves as language learners and perhaps an idea of what is reasonably achievable. Even if it's on a subconscious level, we still might carry the belief that I took X number of years of languages in school and I'm no closer to speak it, therefore learning a language takes years. And I think it's true for everything in school. I think it teaches kids that learning is always measured in years. Learning anything takes a very, very long time. And for example, they go to 12 years of compulsory schooling, and when they leave, they still can't write a proper letter for a job application in their native language. Very often it's the case. So my first piece of advice to a language learner is to take some time and ask yourself, what has school taught me about language learning, and how much is it shaping my current experience? What are your beliefs about it, and why do you think what you think about language learning? A second factor of influence that's closely related to school is our ability as learners. You'd be surprised how many adults still use school as a valid measure of their worth as learners. And it's understandable. After all, what else are you going to base it on? Unless you're a lifelong learner and manage to disprove school in some way by other learning accomplishments, you may still have this idea about yourself. I'm not saying it's rational But I do believe this experience makes up a certain self-image for many adults. And you might say, well, I don't think of school that much. It was so long ago. Perhaps, but it doesn't act on the level of specific memories you have. I think it's beyond that. I think it's subconscious almost. So to recap what I've spoken about so far in this video, I've mentioned 3 forces of influence before you even take your first class, before you even learn your first word in a foreign language. First of all, my self-image as a learner. Number 2, my representation of learning a foreign language. What does it mean to learn a foreign language? And number 3, the expected result I believe I can reach. The next one I'd like to talk about is my representation of language and how I define it. As I mentioned earlier, the human mind doesn't like blanks, and we make up a narrative of what a language is. Now, as a language teacher, it's highly probable that my representation of language is different from the representation of someone who's never learnt one or never attempted to learn one. This type of person might see a language as a vast collection of words that make strange sounds. They don't think of it in terms of formulas or categories of words. They don't see a hierarchy within the words that they would need to know if they ever learnt one. They might say, well, the most important thing in a foreign language is to be able to talk about my hobbies or describe the members of my family. These are lesson plans that would seem reasonable to them. One major task in my job as a language teacher is to change this representation that my students may have of languages. And the longer they see French as a collection of words, the longer it takes to learn it. The sooner they see priorities, formulas, and a system, the sooner they make progress. And this is exactly what the polyglots on YouTube are doing. They see systems and priorities. It's nothing to do with talent. They can apply this understanding of languages because they see priorities, they see a system, and they can apply this to as many languages as they want to learn. They know the questions they need to ask when they approach a new language before they've ever even learnt the first word. But it's easier said than done, because it's very hard to accelerate this changing of ideas in a student. Why? Because, well, you sort of have to do it first before you can look back and say, okay, well, this formula in French is more important than this other formula because it opens up more possibilities. It's always a lot harder to try to convince someone of a truth before they've experienced it themselves. And that's the difference between informing someone of a theory and them accepting the theory as a truth. For example, a coast guard might tell someone, watch out because there are strong currents here and big changes in temperature in the water. But as long as the swimmer hasn't experienced this, they won't fully know what the coast guard meant. But the next time they go swimming, they see the ocean in terms of formulas and they'll know what to look out for. I hope this example makes sense. It makes sense to me though. It's all about looking at the ocean in terms of formulas. You can warn someone about currents and changes in temperature, but if you haven't experienced it yourself, it remains on the level of theory, is what I'm trying to say. So the fourth factor of influence before you've ever learned your first word in a foreign language is your mental representation of what a language means, the definition you give to it. And this, of course, can slow down your learning of a foreign language. How opaque or how clear is your understanding of this thing we call language? Influence number 5 touches upon the subconscious and generalized, should I say, human behavior. It's all the things that make us up as humans, as a species, more generalized human behaviors, or as individuals. One example might be a resistance towards change. I think we all naturally dislike change, and language learning is a big one. It's a very, very big change, and it challenges our identity as people, and it changes us internally. From a speaker of one language, we become a speaker of several. And it's a very, very big transformation when you think of it. There's often a resistance on a subconscious level. It's a disturbance that our system doesn't like and will try to resist because it doesn't match our idea of ourselves and it's not coherent with who we were. Another influence is facility. I believe that humans are naturally attuned to ease, anything easy. I think as a species, I think we're naturally attuned to it. It's something that we're very receptive towards on a subconscious level. I really believe that. A lot of the products, for example, that we buy promise some sort of shortcut in some way. If you look at fashion, the underlying promise is wear this and get a shortcut towards popularity or status. Now, of course, the long way round would be to work on our personality and our value, our internal value, to make ourselves more valuable from the inside. And fashion accomplishes this in an instant through clothing or accessories. We're receptive to this. We're very receptive to this. And for example, a new MacBook gets me to where I want to be a lot faster than if I had to work on myself. On a side note, I think there's a possibility that a minority of people aren't like that, and rather like the opposite, like entrepreneurs or artists, who really crave the uphill struggle and the risk. And perhaps soldiers are like this also, I really don't know. For a majority of people it would make no sense. Why would I want to work 7 days a week for something that's uncertain, that risks failing, when I could just go and work for someone else? And I think it's different wiring. I'm not even attempting to say that one is better than the other, working for someone versus being an entrepreneur, because we know that especially these days being an entrepreneur carries a lot of glory and glitter, but it used to be called self-employed. That's what it used to be called. Now it's called being an entrepreneur. But what I mean to illustrate is that a minority of people, it's just a side note, I think a minority of people actually look for the struggle and find pleasure in discomfort, which I find personally very interesting. We often wonder, why would anyone want to be a soldier and risk their life? But it's possible that they have a different wiring, so that's all I'm sharing with you. There's also the matter of discipline. How receptive to discipline am I as a learner of a foreign language? What role does it play in my life? Some people thrive on it, and others have a natural dislike for it. Yet another is self-belief and visualization. I think there's a big difference in the results between a person who believes and one who doesn't. A person who sees themselves as a new me when they go jogging outside, and one who says, damn, I suppose I'd better go running, they'll get different results. Of course they will. And the same can be seen between two salespeople, one saying, I'm going to make that sale, it's going to work, and the other saying, well, I hope I sell something today. And it's not about achieve and believe and do anything you want, but I think the frame of mind when you approach a foreign language is very, very important, and at least it shapes the results that you're likely to get later on. It doesn't guarantee them, but it does a lot to shape them. As a teacher, I always say we have to see ourselves as a future speaker of the French language or of a foreign language, and be utterly convinced that this thing will happen. And this is what I did in German. I had an awful time learning German at university. There was no structure. It was just awful. It was awful. But I promised myself, Chris, you will be a speaker of German, and I saw it happen. I wanted it to happen, and that I was utterly convinced, and I had a very, very strong burning desire that I would be one day a speaker of German, and it helped me, of course. So for best results, I think this is very, very important. Visualization, see yourself as a speaker of French, because then it makes a lot more sense to do those exercises regularly. Not doing them would be a contradiction with your identity. We'd say, well, this is strange, I'm not working on my French, but I'm supposed to be on my way to being a speaker of French. Why am I not working on it? You see, there would be a contradiction. It's a lot less shocking not to work on your French if the decision is, well, I'm sort of dipping my toe into French and I can miss a week or two or even 2 months, and it wouldn't be a shock to the system because you haven't exactly promised yourself that you would be a speaker of French, so you can just skip as many lessons as you want. And I'm not even trying to attempt to criticize or anyone's choices, of course not, but I'm just saying that it really helps to do your work regularly if you have visualized, if you have seen yourself as a future speaker of French. And added to this, there are many, many other subconscious and mental factors, such as my self-image as a person, my feelings towards learning, how much I believe it's going to work, and so many others which I couldn't mention today. There you have it, a quick rundown of the factors of influence that shape your learning experience before you've even learned your first word in a foreign language. We all have them, and I think it's a matter of knowing about them and navigating through them as best we can. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Chris. See you soon. Bye.